It's that time of year again. The Jerx's book came out. I've had a read, and here's my review for it. The first thing I have to talk about is how you get this book. So you get the book in the mail like this. You open up this box, and this is what you find. It's kind of frightening. Had a full color photo of the one and only Michael Lamar, ladies and gentlemen. I laughed really hard whenever I opened that up. Thought that was hilarious. But then what you get inside is the book and then some items. This is his. You actually get a pin to the White Wand Society, which Andy's talked about on his site before, and you get his new deck, which is Fanny's, which this is the back design, and then these are actually brown and pink. And if you want to know why, look it up on the Jerx, and I think you'll find the explanation to that. So let's get into the book. This book is called Toy. It's called Thinking of You. And this is his take on mentalism in an amateur situation. This is what the book looks like. Once again, like his others, it's black, has the word toy on the side there, and Thinking of You across the bottom here. So this is his take on mentalism in amateur casual situations. I'm gonna speed through it, try to tell you some high points. He has an introduction about what doesn't work with mentalism up close, or sorry, in casual situations. Then it opens with a trick called Ever in Your Favor, which is his take on equivoke, and it's his third wave equivoke that can be done with any 8 objects that somebody grabs around their house. It's really, really great. It's got a fascinating premise. It's not just like a random thing. It is a full trick. You can't really apply his equivoke to another trick. It's all combined in one, and it's really, really great. His third wave equivoke is really clear language, so it's not something ambiguous like pick up 2 objects and throw those away, or choose one for you, for me, for so it's very, very clean wording. And then he has an essay on how to remove predictions from your work in amateur situations. He thinks that's something that kind of puts people off because a prediction is basically like, hey, I'm awesome, so it's how to get rid of that in your work. Then he has something that he calls dual unreality, and this is for a level of dual reality you can add to your performances in amateur situations that is not going to destroy the trick. Let me make this clear. This is not a way to use dual reality up close in amateur situations. This is not a way to take your existing tricks. Instead, this is a different layer you can add to your tricks in amateur situations, a type of dual reality that people will want to talk about afterwards and will actually benefit from talking about afterwards. We have his work on enhancing spectator as mind reader. So this is just his thoughts on making a spectator's mind reader make sense and work. Then he has something called Head and Hands. This is a little tool he has, and I'll show it to you. It's at the end of the book here. This little tool looks like some science, but it's basically a way to get into almost any trick you want to do with intuition or memory or anything like that. And it's basically showing these different areas of the head that you can poke or scratch or whatever that will invoke these different responses. So it's just a tool to have with you. Then it comes to the Rain Man trick, which is one of my favorite. Basically, your participant does 3 or 4 different Rain Man experiments where they're trying to calculate something really quickly, and none of them work. And it turns out that they've done something way more impossible than just the small experiments, such as counting the grains of rice on a plate just by looking at it, or hearing how many pages are in a book by it riffling. But they've actually done something way more impossible. I won't spoil that, but it's really good. I actually came up with it. So the way it's written up in the book, it's really can only be done one-on-one. I've actually come up with a way to do it on stage, and I am excited to try it out because I love the presentation, I love his premise and his hook, and I love the moment of the effect at the end is just like, I've actually done that one already, it's great. Then he has an essay on building the perfect peak, and it talks about some focus testing that he did and the information he got from that. Then it goes into his 10% peak, which is his card peak with a deck of cards. And then it also tells how to use that same peak for a wallet peak. So if you wanted to peek a word or drawing or something, it's a really great peek. It feels like you never look at the object that you're peeking. So you never look at the deck or you never look at the wallet. People will swear you never look at it. So they feel like certain that there's no way you could have peeked. It also touches on a really good way to make the card going back in the wallet make sense. It's really lovely. Then we have Hybrid, which is basically, he says no one will ever do this, and that may be true, but I really like it. Excuse me. Basically, this is, you have like 5 different 50-50 tricks, such as cat or dog, or hot or cold, and every time you're predicting it. But you say this is something you've been working on since you're like 7, so the first one's not that good, they can see through it. The next one's a little better, but it still doesn't fool them. And it gets a little better, and then at the end, they have absolutely no clue. They're left with a really strong effect at the end. I won't go more into that, that's it. Then we have his card force, it's called Carte Blanche, I think that's how you say it. It's his card force with a borrowed deck, examined deck, nothing special about the deck. And I think sometimes people can read his card forces and think that he's not adding anything, but what he's adding is the psychology. It's really the psychology, because mechanically this is not much different than other card forces, but the psychology is worlds different. It's like his damsel technique from last year, but used with a borrowed deck of cards. That's totally just a normal deck of cards, 52 cards. I tried this with my wife. She had no clue I forced her a card. She asked me after I showed it to her, how could that have been a force? How could you have forced me that? And that's exactly what you leave the spectator feeling. It feels like they had a completely free choice. There's no way you could have made them pick that card. So it's a very good tool to have. It works wonders. Then we have a little essay on earning the emotional elements that you use in mentalism and why. Ask them to write down their first kiss and like how to earn those emotional elements. Then he has a trick called the decision artist, which is basically a way to genuinely build a really strong connection with someone. And it's in the form of a prediction trick, but that's not what it's about. It's about the relationship building. But at the end, you basically play 6 games with this person, and at the end you show that you've predicted all these different games from the very beginning. It's really great. It's not too hard to do, but he does warn you this is going to build a strong relationship. So if that's not something you want with that person, you don't want to do this trick. Then it comes to his focus group testing on batching predictions. So such as having 5 tricks that you do you reveal all 5 things at the end all together, or do you reveal those 5 things one at a time throughout the trick? And it's just kind of his focus group testing on that. Then he has a trick called Marmota Monax. I think he just makes these names up just for me to struggle to say them because they don't ever mean anything. Okay. Marmotomonax is one that he says will completely destroy people's reality, kind of mess with their brain more than anything else. And I kind of agree with that. It's a lot of work, but once you do it, it's really, really powerful. It's a lot like it's basically the same trick as his decision artist from earlier, except it's not with a focus on building a relationship. Instead, it's just a focus on this mind-melding moment that they're left with at the end that's just like, oh my gosh, they know it's not real, yet they're like, how could this be possible if it wasn't real, what you're saying, which is just what he loves. Then it comes to his essay on transgressive anagrams, which he's talked about before in past releases. Doesn't really talk too much about how to build it, but just why he thinks that that's the best way to use an anagram. And I agree with him. It's great thinking. Excuse me. Oh, then it comes to his force, which is called Except for You. This is a wonderful force. It's like using eeny, meeny, miny, mo to force someone, but instead of you saying eeny, meeny, miny, mo, the people actually create a phrase to say. It's a really intriguing premise, and it's an incredibly clean force. It doesn't feel like you should be able to force something, but you can. And he does it as a person force, so he's using people just like you would on a schoolyard. It's really, really great. Then we come to Kid Idiot, and this is a way to use that force from earlier and make it into something more, make it into a full routine. And it's also a really great premise just within itself that you can kind of apply to a lot of stuff. You could even come up with a full show with that one premise, and I think that's a really good idea. Then we come to Unknown Personal, which is just Andy's take on what you should reveal in mentalism if you know someone well, because often we're telling people to write down how old they were when they had their first kiss or the initials of their first boyfriend, and if you know someone really well, you may already know these things. So it's his take on what can you ask them that would be interesting for you to reveal. It gives you some specific examples and then also just some things you can think on to help create your own ideas. And then it's his trick, the distance you can be from your sun, which is kind of a version of what he was just explaining, kind of the proof of what he was just explaining. He's explained this elsewhere. Maybe it was on his site. I think it was, or maybe it was in a newsletter. I think it was on his site, though, about just a simple prediction, but it's what you're predicting that means so much. You're actually predicting how far a mother can be from her son, which is really, really great. Then we come to what I think is the best in the book. It's called Two-Way Street. It's a trick with a maze. I really don't want to say too much about it because it is so good. It's so good. It's so practical. It's so easy to do, and will pull the pants off of everyone. Whenever I was reading it, just reading through the presentation, I was like, there's no way that's possible. There's no way that could happen. And then you read the explanation, and it is, and it's very easy to do. Then we come to Patio Doors, which is his little essay on how to use the patio force and make it effective, and a little subtle thing you can add to the beginning, which makes it all the more deceptive. That last phase of the patio is always weird, and it's his take on how to clean that up a bit. But then it's also just his general essay on how to make it more deceptive overall. Then it's just some letters. He calls it Letters to a Dumb Mentalist. It's some funny letters that he's written to a mentalist, kind of pointing out some of the craziness and the idiocy that is in mentalism sometimes, and just what people think we're getting away with when we're really not. And then it's Olas. Once again, those names. This is a trick with a balloon where they write down, this is really, really crazy. So you go to the dollar store, you grab a bunch of things, you grab a helium balloon and a pad and a crayon, and you go to a park, and they sit on a bench, and they open up the pad, and they write down any word on the pad, and they rip that paper off and fold it up, and they put it on the balloon with a paper clip. You've bought all this in the dollar store, and you're standing way up, like 20 yards across if you want, and they fold it up, they attach it to the balloon, and then they let it go. All the way, the whole time you're over 20 yards away. They let the balloon go, and then you come together, you hold hands, you do some stuff, and then they go home and they find the balloon in their tree, and it's the exact same balloon, and it has something paper clipped, and when they open it up, it is exactly the piece of paper that they wrote. It's a more practical solution to his faith trick. It's a more practical solution to another version of that trick that he had in a previous release. It's very practical to do. You don't have to do it with all going to the dollar store and getting all of the stuff, but that just adds an emotional element to it that's gonna make it linger in their mind a little bit more long term. It's really, really great. I love it. You can make that balloon appear anywhere, on their car, in their tree by their house, anywhere. It's really good. And he says that he's the son of, who's the god over wind? That's how it ends. Hippolytus, keeper of the winds. So that's kind of his out. Can you tell me what I'm thinking? This is his little essay about what you should do if somebody ever says, can you tell me what I'm thinking? And then also, this also lays out his approach to social mentalism in 3 steps. And I'll just kind of tell you, it says, start normal, eliminate certainty, make it a collaboration, not a demonstration. Those are his 3 points. If you want to know more, you need to get Toy. And then that's it. That's the entire book. So you'll notice there's actually not many tricks. It's a lot more essays, a lot more thoughts, but the tricks that are in here are super practical. This is not the old Jerx days of having to go to a beach and staple a baggie underneath the pier in the middle of the night. This is not those days. Everything in this book you can do tomorrow night. I mean, really, this is something you can do. The most extensive setup in here would probably take you a long time, several hours over the course of a week, but like that, and that's extremely extensive. And that's just sitting there while you're watching TV. Like, it's not something active. It's not something you have to do the night before. You can do that, set it up months in advance. Everything else in the book is like you could do it tomorrow. I've already used 3 or 4 of the routines in this book. It's like that. You open it up, you read it, you can do it. Do I advise that? No, not unless you're experienced, but you can. This is a little bit smaller book than his other books, but it is loaded with good content. If you have any interest in mentalism, this is a great resource and kind of teaches you how to do mentalism in social situations that makes sense for them and doesn't alienate you. Once again, he's outdone himself. I am already looking forward to next year. If it's anything as good as this one, then we're in for a treat. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you haven't got Toy, you're probably out of luck, but maybe you can find a secondhand copy online. If you do, pick it up. You're not going to regret it. See you guys.